Then of course we have got the very famous angel funding route. Angels are nothing but high net worth individuals who are networked by either platforms or networked individually with certain enterprises, and they comprise not only the investors, they also comprise mentors, they also comprise leaders who are part of a forum, and they typically look at companies which could be supported in the early stage and seed stage activities, and their job is to kind of help a startup take off. And there are a number of angel investment companies, and there are also several angel investors. Here we have got 5 investors I have highlighted. Typically, they are investors who have moved out of successful entrepreneurial companies such as Flipkart or Infosys, and or very well known industrial leaders, market leaders like Ratan Tata. So, Binny Bansal, Sachin Bansal, Chris Gopalakrishnan, and Nandan Nilekani, and Ratan Tata I have mentioned. But if you see the lead profiles, they have been founders of high value startups, or they have been founders and leaders of mainstream corporations. Some of the people who are not in this top angel investors list but can be found elsewhere, they are academicians from US, other developed European countries, or who have made good standing for themselves in India. They are high net worth individuals typically, and industry executives are also participating. And the phases in which they invest are post retirement or post cash out of the existing firm, and at times in service supported by employers. The scope varies between personal investments to tactical investments to strategic investments, and the purpose again varies between social purpose, business purpose, and in certain cases only profit motive. So, when we talk about angel networks, we have got 4 types of networks. One is innovation, second is perfection. Now we have got 4 types of angel networks shown here. One is the Indian Angel Network, which is probably the largest angel network we can find in India. It offers up to 6 crore per business. The second one is the Mumbai Angels, which is the second largest angel network. InMobi has been a very successful startup organized by this Mumbai Angels Network. Keiretsu is another forum which is global, but it has got its network across countries, and it is a platform. It evaluates the proposals but allows the individual investor to deal with the company, make his own decisions. And Let's Venture, it is a platform located in India and Singapore. It connects the investors and startups and enables the investor members take their individual investment decisions. So, these are the 4 angel networks I have demonstrated here as symbolic of the angel support. Then we have got incubator support. Incubators are facilities offered by private institutions as well as public institutions to provide plug and play support. Not only the plug and play facilities, the incubators provide certain legal help. They have prescribed formats by which a company can be established. They provide company registration support. They also provide patenting support. Therefore, certain of these administrative activities which are beyond the easy hold of startups who are techs by definition, these incubators provide. And to that extent, they help the startups overcome their resource constraints and get organized well. They also provide certain relief in ideation and prototyping based on frequent interactions with the mentors. Government India has set up under its innovation mission Atal incubation centers, and it helps both public sector and private sector participate in this initiative. They also have scaled up the established incubation centers. If a person is interested in understanding more about these things, we can go through this link which we have given at the bottom of this slide. And there are also incubators which are focused more on the not-for-profit startups, and these not-for-profit startups are supported by multinational companies like Cisco and Ford Foundation, and also Indian large companies like IRB Infrastructure. Encore is one company which has recently unveiled Series N to provide for funding for 30 startups over 5 years, ranging up to 2 crores rupees for each startup. And they also have executives from various IT companies who help in the mentoring and management of these startups. They also have developed their own non-profit incubators. Apart from being an incubator by itself, Encore has helped develop certain non-profit incubators who can take on this movement further. So, Foundation for Environmental Monitoring, Sushrat Foundation, then Sathi, these are all foundations which have been started by Encore to take on this mantle further. And they typically provide in terms of certain funding, not certainly at the levels which the individual or individual seed investors or individual companies provide, but they provide funds in small time grants, they provide debt, quasi equity and equity. The other investors we have talked about, and angel networks are not few, they have made 81 deals in 2018, and incubators and accelerators as of now there are 250, but not all incubators could make deals, only about 46 deals have been made by the incubators and accelerators. Y Combinator, Accelerate, these are some of the interesting incubators which you have. And if you see the list of graduates from Accelerate, you can see that the idea is to get startups enrolled as part of the incubator system, and after the incubation is done, they are allowed to move out of the incubator. So, when IIT Madras Research Park, which is a leading incubator, sets up its facilities, it is expected that the companies will function there for a certain period of time, and depending upon their business strategy and execution, they are kind of free to move out and find their own space and move on to become a bigger company, so that more companies can be incubated as we go forward with the available infrastructure. Then we talk about bootstrapping. That is a very interesting method of financing, wherein we use our resources very creatively, we use the trade channels creatively, and also use other stakeholder relationships, so that you do not raise any equity at all. So, a bootstrapping company typically approaches let us say a large company, says that I have got a different way of doing this product, give me the market access. It may also say that I would like to do this operational cycle through a particular portal which is dedicated to bootstrapping companies, and then you have to provide me the advance money. So, if the product is of interest and if people feel that there is advantage to the main company by delegating this development to this company, it is quite possible that advance money is provided for the operating cycle to kick in. So, you are funding your working capital requirements, you are also enabling a market access, and therefore, it is a very cost efficient way of setting up the initial base for startup. It works very well in product development, where potential customers would like certain exclusivity in the product, and they are having interest in the kind of technology which the startup operates, and in case they can exchange based on startup's interest the equity stake versus funding, it is possible to bootstrap the company without much of private equity and venture capital participation. It is also very successfully applied in contract manufacturing organization, where you work for another company, but in a very innovative way, and the bigger company has got the capacity that can be offered, and along with the capacity you get certain advance orders, and therefore you are able to fund your future payments. But to be able to bootstrap, the founders and the working teams must be able to be managing their working capital requirements very tightly, and they have the ability to scale up in a gradual manner. But to talk about the cons, bootstrapping can be resource constraining, it may kind of limit your vision, it may limit your strategy, and it may kind of make you dependent on the larger company which is helping you with your working capital support or product development support. So, it is an opportunity to hone your internal skills with some kind of assurance by a bigger market participant, but not necessarily always the best route. That said, you can say that there are many examples of even today's large corporations having bootstrapped founders at some point of time. So, you got some examples here. We know that Facebook is leading a social media platform. Dell is a leading computer company. Apple, of course, needs no introduction. HP again in computers and printing equipment and enterprise solutions. Microsoft, of course, the leader in operating systems. When you look at each of these founders, at some point of time or the other, they have bootstrapped their way to growth. And it does not mean that they did not take other finances, they did take finances, but bootstrapping their product, demonstrating to the customers and getting the customers buy-in was one of the important phases of their development. Again, here you can find some more references on bootstrapping. At the top and the bottom I have provided certain references. Then we come to the real big ticket investors. We have under Indian regulations a concept of alternative investment funds, and they are categorized into category 1, category 2 and category 3 funds. Category 1 funds are startup funds, category 2 are private equity and VC funds, and category 3 are hedge funds. And we can also, as I said, we can create a newer breed of funds typically appropriate for India, like I talked about Indian individual investment funds, which need to be creatively created for Indian requirements. Category 1 funds mainly invest in startups, small and micro enterprises or any other sector which government considers economically and socially viable. Category 2 firms are the companies which are private equity funds or debt funds, for which no specific incentives or concessions are given by the government or any other regulator. Category 3 are hedge funds, which trade with the view to make short term returns, which are funds which are open ended, again for which there will be no incentives or concessions. So, typically as far as the government is concerned, they feel that the category 1 startup funds are the ones which require incentives, and the others are based on the market dynamics and also the startup valuations. So, when we look at the Western venture capital model, they have entered India in a big way from the 1990s. Venture capital has been there in the developed world for several decades, but the Indian entry has been from the 1990s, and that has been pursuant to a decision of the government of India in that period to allow foreign finance companies to take stakes in the Indian corporates. So, taking stakes of 10 to 25% in the capital structure of new as well as fast growing companies, venture capital firms have enabled growth of a number of startups. They have enabled several first generation enterprises strengthen their equity base and also become highly successful Indian companies. They enable companies achieve this crucial leap from a modest beginning to a high growth area. They also help the companies get into a modern technological framework. For example, you are thinking of a smart phone of your own design. Initially, you can start by bootstrapping with various resources available or seed funding. But when you really want to have your own assembly plant, which has got its own high level of environmental control and processing systems, then definitely you need higher level of finance, which venture capital funds can typically make available. And venture capital itself is available in different series, series A to series E, F, G, like that. And pre-series A is also possible, where post-prototype investments are considered. In the Western venture capital model, we have only the Western venture capital firms with Indian leaders working in. But venture capital firms of the Western origin and the Indian venture capital firms are completely two different streams. What we would think is that we need to have a combination of global VCs and local corporates, so that we develop an adaptive venture capital ecosystem, which need not necessarily go by the stringent evaluation parameters or the stringent valuation parameters of the Western venture capitals, but we also look at something which is very endogenous to Indian requirements. This slide gives the top venture capital firms in India 2018 ranking: Axel Partners, Sequoia Capital India, Bloom Ventures, Nexus Venture Partners, Kalari Capital, Matrix Partners, ODR Networks, Safe Partners, IDG Ventures, BNext Ventures. If you look at any successful startup, you will find that 3 or 4 names from these top 10 people are always there, indicating their commitment and also being a participant of the Indian startup ecosystem. Global private equity system is completely different. They depend on the high ticket size for their ability to fund huge growth. Typically, we have had US and Europe based funds priming the growth, but more recently Japan and China based funds also have come into the play. And though the economic slowdown of 2008, 2009 kind of shook the foundations of venture capital as well as private equity industries, later on the entry of big funds like SoftBank and Alibaba and also global networking of these funding institutions has provided a new fillip to the private equity model. And these are the companies which we are looking at: Blackstone, the Carlyle Group, KKR, TPG, Apollo, Bain Capital, Warburg Pincus, CVC, Advent International. Again, when we look at big companies, you will find that these are the companies which have enabled large companies become bigger. Many companies in the pharmaceutical space have had investments by these private equity funds and have enabled the companies become from Indian orientation to global orientation. And many of the real estate firms have been supported by some of the well-known private equity firms. And even in the banking system, when certain banks are cash strapped, but their operating models are good, and when the teams are good, private equity enters, and typically private equity is considered in one manner as patient capital, because they feel that the operating model is good, proven, but the company is having certain constraints and challenges in moving from this stage of development to the next stage of development. So the capital is willing to be patient for 5 to 7 years and let the company find its moorings in this new era successfully. So when we look at this kind of situation, we have got Indian PE firms which we could look at as our goal. We have private corporations, public sector undertakings, mutual funds. We also have in India banks and financial institutions. We also have pension funds. For example, Life Insurance Corporation is one big investment behemoth. Now, if we are able to have all these companies support an Indian PE system, we will be in a position to create our own venture capital firms. We will be able to provide our own private equity system, which is probably insulated from global liquidity trends. One of the reasons why we must maintain the startup movement, irrespective of what happens with the Fed rate or what happens with the central bank policies of other countries, is that India is in a growth mode and we need to continuously grow. And we cannot allow our startup developments be constrained by the global liquidity movements. On the other hand, we should also be able to participate in developments across the regions, across the nations, in case some exciting developments are happening elsewhere. So there is no reason why an Indian private equity firm, if it is established, cannot participate in exciting developments in the Silicon Valley of the West. So we should be in a position to generate a private equity capability within our own system, just as we have created our own banking and financial capability and our own insurance capability. We should be able to do a private equity capability also. So this is a thought for the future. This is a thought for the policy creation in our Indian ecosystem, and that happens when state thinks of itself as a super equity player. State has been running several companies actually, many public sector undertakings which are classified as Maharatnas, Navaratnas and Mini Ratnas are public sector undertakings with 100% ownership of public sector operations, and in steel, oil, gas, containers, distribution, shipping. So various infrastructure areas have been managed by the government directly, as not merely as a promoter and investor, but as a manager. Now, as we think of divestment, as we think of government's role as being separate from supporting versus actually operating, as the debate considers what kind of industries or what kind of economic sectors should be the mainstay of government participation, we also have the startup paradigm coming up. We can think of a situation where we would earn significant disinvestment proceeds as part of the PSU privatization and use part of that disinvestment proceeds to develop PSU driven startups or startups which are very important for the infrastructure development as we go forward. Therefore, state by itself can act as a super equity player in the emerging situation. Government over the last 5 to 6 years has been doing number of things to enhance the awareness and the ability of startup ecosystem. Some of these initiatives are comprehensively listed in the Startup India Hub in the government, and there are about 58 schemes which are available under the Startup India scheme. And in addition to that, various state governments have their own individual schemes, so much so even connecting all these schemes and feeding them to the startups could be a good startup idea. That's the kind of width and diversity of funds as well as the grants that are available for startups. In addition to that, we have National Entrepreneurship Awards every year to help young entrepreneurs and ecosystem builders to get recognized for their outstanding efforts in entrepreneurship development. We have so far talked about for-profit startup activities, but there are also incubators and other supporting investors for non-profit organization. I have come across a very interesting and very noble organization called Bharatiya Yuva Shakti Trust, BYACT. It was set up in 1992 by Lakshmi Venkateshan in India, and it was obviously a kind of very inspired thought that we can bring every nano entrepreneur into a mainstream economic activity. And I was personally a participant in this kind of activities when I was in Ashok Leyland. I was spending one day a week with, not the full day though, I was spending a part of my day with the entrepreneurs who were empaneled in BYST, understanding how they could convert their technology and craft into a viable enterprise. And as of now, nationally, BYST has supported 4,200 micro entrepreneurial ventures and has seen the employment of 175,000 people. It has also provided training to people in rural hamlets as well as in urban areas for several thousands of people. And this very interesting enterprise has been supported by Confederation of Indian Industry, and this initiative covers 6 regions of India. It is also networked with major international organizations that are aligned to similar objectives. This NPO model is particularly appropriate when financial needs are low, mentorship needs are high. That is it's a kind of small enterprise model or nano enterprise model where the individual has got its ability, the craft to deliver a product, but it requires a lot of management effort, and that management effort can be provided by outside experts as well as BYST. So with all this kind of support which is available, over a period of 2 days, India has indeed witnessed a huge transformation across the startup space. We have today 20,000 plus startups. We have got 270 plus incubation and business acceleration centers programs, 200 plus global and domestic VC firms supporting homegrown startups, and a fast growing community of 230 plus angel investors. We have the 3rd largest unicorn community in the world. We have discussed this in the previous sessions. We also mentioned that while we are the 3rd largest, the distance between the 2nd, which is China, and us is significantly large. And China is probably the number 1 in terms of unicorns in the emerging areas of artificial intelligence, machine learning and deep learning. Therefore, we said that while it's great that we are number 3, we also need to bridge this gap between number 1 and 2 on one hand and number 3, which is India, on the other. But then it is very clear that the unicorns have made a huge difference by changing the outlook of global investors, VCs and PEs towards the Indian startup system. And the growing number of internet users in India, which is about 600 million users, and the mobile connectivity makes India a future digital hub, and therefore inspires many investors to come and support the Indian startup system. Quite apart from that, we can also find, just as the earlier generations of corporations supported ancillary units, we can have corporations today look at startup ecosystem as a new kind of ancillary infrastructure that needs to be supported. We have got the idea of new technologies being started by new companies like telecommunication venture by Reliance Industries Limited. Similarly, Mahindra has got its own digital services. Then Godrej has got its agro services. Each of these companies have decided that we will take up our vertical as the new platform to generate startups. And if every corporation starts modernizing itself, and in this process of modernization takes up supporting of startups as one of the important activities, corporations themselves can become investors. So, if you look at Reliance startup portfolio, you will see that Reliance Industries has invested in 11 startups to reinforce its digital ecosystem. Some of the startups have already been incubated and supported and funded by other companies. That does not prevent, as I said earlier, we can have multiple investors in any particular startup. But what is important here is that these startups are dovetail to the value chain of the newer digital platform which the company is executing. More information on this can be got from the link which I have given below. So, as I said, each of these startups has had certain objective in mind. C Square Enterprise Tech for Digital Commerce, EasyGov SaaS Enterprise, because when you have telecommunications, it helps you to do the public services on the fly. Then we have got Mbibe, AI based digital learning. Digital learning is one aspect of mobile telephony. We have seen again in previous thing how digital learning has become one of the important startup domains in the startup space. Then how do you find the resources for our services? Haptic digital assistance, that is again another important thing. Then mixed reality, augmented reality, which is parts of gaming and media content services through the mobile telephony, that is also an important startup. So, if the business vertical has certain focus areas, it becomes logical that that business vertical should support several other startups with appropriate investments. Then we have got corporate catalyst model. Here we have talked about companies which have been supported by other companies and which are plugged into the value chain. The same thing can be further extended, saying that I as a corporation can help a totally attached startup ecosystem. So, Chinese phone and appliance maker Xiaomi has said that I would invest as much as $1 billion in 100 startups in India over the next 5 years to develop an ecosystem of apps around its mobile phone use. This is an example of the approach. Similarly, when Times of India Group decided that we will extend our teaching to all the schools by co-opting experienced people, render this as a public service, that has become a corporate catalyst model. In addition to these kinds of initiatives, if industry associations also entered this space like FICCI, CIN, ASSOCHAM, then there could be great catalysis of the startup movement by the corporate participation. And such corporate funds can also invest in the seed rounds, provide corporate grants and participate in IPOs of the startups as anchor investors and incentivizing such investments with capital gains relief. The fact is that successful corporations have got enormous funds at their disposal, which they can effectively leverage for both industrial and social startup development. This process has taken significant roots in the Western domain. As you can see from the logos here, we will find that every large corporation has its own venture arm. Intel has got Intel Capital, Qualcomm, the mobile chip maker, they have got Qualcomm Ventures. Roche has got its own venture division. Novo Nordisk, it has been an early pioneer having its own venture capital network. GE Ventures is another active participant. So, with this Intel Capital, then GE Ventures, they have made significant investments in startups and the number have moved from 50 to as much as 300. We also have another model where the Indian founders can set up their own venture capital firms. One of the successful models in that has been the Catamaran company set up by ex-Infosys lead co-founder, Mr. Narayan Murthy. He has set up Catamaran Ventures as an investment fund that helps early stage startups. So many other investors, Infosys co-founders like Chris Gopalakrishnan, Nandan Nilekani, as well as Mohandas Pai, and long back Mr. Raghavan himself, they have set up their own small units to help Indian startups with the VC firms of their own. Now, companies listed in the National Stock Exchange have got market capitalization of over $1 trillion. Even if a minuscule percentage, say 0.1 to 0.5% of this kind of market capitalization is used at one point, $1 to 5 billion will be available to set up private equity ventures or venture capital firms of this nature. So, when the scale of finance is combined with the passion of the founders and the leaders to mentor budding startups, the availability of financing for the Indian startups would be enormous. Vedanta, for example, has pledged that 75% of the founders' wealth would be used for investment in programs with socio-economic objectives. So has been some statements by other industrial founders. So it is possible to follow, replicate or improve upon the Catamaran model as we go forward.